Did she? Oh, good.
I can't even get.
Good, good, good.
I'll try to be on my best behavior.
We'll call the Park County Board of Supervisors December 10th to meeting order and rise and pledge allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Hey, play ball. We're getting better, Dale.
Yeah. That was kind of.
Roll call. Are we ready?
Here.
Oh, yeah. You think so? Let me just hold my outfit. Don't. Here. I hit it, and guess what? No one, somebody said, oh, by the way, you get Chuck. We don't do I'm trying this.
Is it beeping?
It's beeping.
We gotta retrain you?
Oh, you got to push the right button.
Oh, now I'm here.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, 20 President.
Oh, if I'm not here, I'll just.
We have to retrain the young people. 20 present, 1 excused. Motion to present the agenda. Mark Miller, seconded by Kathy.
Thank you.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
John and Bob, you want to come forward? We have a person retiring from the county. John's going to say a few words. I always add that your job must have had its ups and downs.
Today we're recognizing Bob Erickson, and Bob just recently retired. December 1st was his last day after 35 and a half years, actually a little bit more than 35 and a half years with the county. And he actually had one job. He operated the bridges in Sturgeon Bay. He was one of the first of the crews who worked the Bayview Bridge when it was completed in 1978, and of course he also operated all the other structures. But it is in his entire tenure, Bob has been a safe, very safe, reliable, consistent operator, and we appreciate his long years of service for the state and the county and all the citizens. As you know, and maybe some of you don't know, but bridge tenders work a swing shift. They work from 7 to 3, 3 to 11, and 11 to 7. And that takes a significant toll on your life. And Bob, thank you for all your years of service, and I hope you'll now have some regular time to enjoy all the things that you can enjoy. So, thank you very much.
Back to 78, I would have never thought that. The county treated me well.
Good.
Appreciate it.
Very good. Thank you.
Thank you.
In your packet or on your Zoom, you got the following correspondence, fund balance, an idea for the WCA annual conference. If you have any ideas, you can submit it. A letter from the American Transmission Company explaining where they're going to do some improvements in the transmission line through Door County. And a letter from the DNR on the number of pieces of property that they're contemplating putting into conservancy in different organizations. One in particular in Jacksonport, we didn't do anything because there's only like a 30-day window and we didn't have time to have a meeting or anything to either say it's a good idea or a bad idea. I called Al Bernstein and explained it to him. He's fully aware of it. Their piece of land next to their park in downtown Jacksonport, I guess, and they're for it. So anyway, the letter is there. Any questions? If not, we'll go to public comment. Anybody from the public want to comment? If not, we'll go to civility project. You want to introduce?
Certainly. I would be delighted to introduce this. This came out of a meeting that Supervisor Runquist and I had where we thought it was a good idea to bring the civility project in today to talk about their efforts. So today we have Sue today to present the civility project.
Okay,
Sue.
thank you very much, Maureen. I appreciate that. And I thank you very much for your time today. I know how difficult it is when you have a lengthy agenda So we've only got 50 slides, and when we get through those, we'll be all finished.
Very good.
Just joking, folks. Only 9 slides. But I do appreciate your time. You should have in your packets these materials, which we will be taking a look at as we move through the short presentation. I know how tough your job is. Being on a board is really tough work. It's not quite as challenging when people agree with your decisions or your thinking, but oftentimes we find on boards, and I've certainly had that experience in my lifetime of serving on boards in both Brown and Door County, that sometimes we disagree internally, and sometimes folks out there, our constituents, disagree with us. And that's when it really gets to be challenging. And when I first heard about the Civility Project, I thought it made a lot of sense to take a look at this, because it certainly can help us to have a more positive environment in which to work and do our board work, and it also can help us to be more effective and more efficient. So let's get started, and we'll see how the technology works. I am a technology immigrant, not a native, but I know we have lots of good resources here. So let's move ahead. Whoops, whoops.
We're moving.
Too far. Okay, back up.
Moving pretty fast.
Be civil now.
I will. I promise not to throw this at anybody. Okay, here is in a nutshell what the Civility Project is. A community-based initiative. And it's community-based here in Door County. We are learning a lot from the Oshkosh community.
Sue, excuse me, would you use the microphone, please?
Oh,
Otherwise,
sure.
it won't go on camera.
All right.
Thank you.
I like to move, but that's okay. Community-based initiative that advances the cause of civility in everyday life. And this is something that not only applies to our board work, but it applies to everyday life, to strengthen our shared community. All right, and here we have those tools of the Civility Project, which help us to weave together restraint, respect, and responsibility. The 3 R's. We can think of it that way, but some of us who may be of my vintage remember the reading, writing, and arithmetic from the early days. So weaving together restraint, respect, and responsibility. It's very simple. Actually, all of these things we really learned in kindergarten, or we learned from our parents when we were little kids, these 9 tools of civility. And you have the little card with these 9 tools on, which is very handy to have to be able to remind us of those principles. There also are large posters, and Shirley tells me we have a supply in the back that you are welcome to take and post wherever they might be useful. And these cover those 9 very simple tools. The first one, pay attention. Pretty basic. We learned that in school. The second one, listen. And not just hear, but really listen and understand the meaning of what the person is saying. Be inclusive. My dad always used to tell me when I was a kid, you can learn something from everybody. So be inclusive of everyone's thinking. Don't gossip, pretty basic. Show respect. We try to teach our young people that at a very early age. Be agreeable. And this doesn't mean that you can't stand on your principles, but do it in a way that is not denigrating to the other person. Apologize. Sometimes we have to do this. We humans are not perfect, and there are times when we do need to apologize for a misstatement or something that we did. Give constructive criticism. I think most of us are very open to constructive criticism. It's the kind of criticism that is downgrading, that is negative, that really doesn't advance the cause, that gives us difficulty. And finally, take responsibility. It is quite possible to be true to one's beliefs and be civil at the same time, and we just need to remind ourselves of that from time to time. The issue is not whether to stand firm or to compromise, but how to express our firmness. And here we have a resource on civility, and there are many of them, and our own library has several of them that would be available for checkout. But this one talks about some of the data, some of the research on civility. More than 90% of the workers experienced incivility. 50% lost work time worrying, and 13% left their jobs. This is scary because it costs us a lot of money to train people, and if they are not being treated appropriately on their jobs, they're losing time worrying and leaving their jobs. It's costing us money. More than 50% of the American workforce has high stress levels. We hear about this all the time. More than 30% identifies people issues as the #1 cause of stress at work. Workload is #2. It's not that people don't have the skills to do the job sometimes, it's they don't have the people skills. Okay, why are we here? Okay. Jill?
Maybe you've got it coming up. Hit it again.
Okay, very good. Here are some things that relate specifically to the county board. You can promote civil discourse or civility by residents as they address you and as you communicate with them. There was no one here for public comment today, but I'm sure you've had some in the past who have come for public comment and may not always have been civil. You can improve communication among yourselves, which in turn help you to use your meeting time wisely and improve the quality of decision-making, that efficiency, that effectiveness. County employees, you're an employer, can plant the seeds of civility at work and in their homes. Sometimes it's most difficult for us to be civil in our homes because we're with people that we know and love, and it's easy sometimes to be uncivil. And finally, you can help civility branch out into all of the communities of Door County. We have a great group of people working in Door County to express civility and to promote it throughout the county, but we need a whole lot more people to do that as well. And civil actions can be contagious. All right, so here's our challenge. Remember, I said this is pretty basic, common sense type of thing? It's easy, yes, so easy to be civil with people who agree with you and those who think like you do. The challenge, however, is to be civil with those who strongly disagree and do not share your opinions. And any of us who serve on boards have had this experience with people. Okay, here is the Civility Pledge, and you have a copy of that at your stations. Looks like this. There's a place to sign on the bottom, and we would encourage you to take a look at this and to sign this pledge today. And it has the 9 areas. Pay attention, listen closely, be inclusive all the way through, accept responsibility. There's a place for your name, and we have a box in the back where you can leave those pledges today. Remember, this is just your personal, individual pledge and your personal acceptance of it. And what can you do? Here's a list. Individually sign that pledge today, or later if you wish. As a board, in the future, adopt a civility resolution. And you have a sample resolution in your packets also that you can take a look at, and we would hope that you would choose to put this on a future agenda of yours. model civil behavior. We can all do this. And we can all discuss civility with our friends, our family, our colleagues. The Door County Civility Project is very interested in doing advanced training. What we have here today is just a very small sample, just an overview really of what the project is. But we do have longer trainings, and we can tailor that to whatever the needs of the group might be, whether it's an hour or 2 hours or more. We can do that. We have people who are trained to do these presentations. You can invite us back here for more training if that would be what you would wish to do. Or if you have other groups that you know of in the county that you belong to, church groups, other organizations like Rotary or Optimist that you think might be interested in this. And finally, become involved in the activities of the Door County Civility Project. We're always looking for people to serve on committees and to be trained as presenters and to work with us in a variety of ways. And finally, we want to share some of these resources with you where you can get more information, and we invite you to just say yes to civility. Are there any questions at this time? Or comments?
I have one.
Yes.
What happens if I fail this every day?
If you,
If I sign this pledge and I fail it, I
well,
can't keep to it.
we're not perfect humans, are we? We're going to have those kinds of situations, but I think we can make a conscious effort to really try to address that behavior. But none of us are going to be perfect. So I don't think if you sign the pledge, you necessarily need to beat yourself up if you have an uncivil moment. But what the pledge can do is to remind you that maybe there would be another way to address a situation that might be more civil and a win-win for everybody involved.
Okay.
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 Any more questions? Hugh?
Make sure the people in the town board of Liberty Grove have this information.
We are trying to get this out to as many people as we possibly can in Door County, and Shirley and I have been working on sending letters out to people on the town boards, various organizations, school boards, anybody can use this. It's common sense, it's practical, that's what really appeals to me. It's not that complicated. It's just that we need to remind ourselves of our human frailty sometimes. So, thank you very much. I appreciate your time, and do let us know how we can help, and don't forget to sign the pledge. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sue.
Thank you.
And thank you, Shirley. Next item is witness. Sure.
Did you learn that in law school, Greg?
Yeah.
Things like grants the control of it.
Yeah.
You want to lead us into Whipley?
This is almost as if they're being very,
We have Julia Johnson here today from Whipley. Julia?
they're already accusing us of that.
Explain what Whipley is, just so.
Here, these,
Whipley is a consulting company that we've hired, and they have performed a compensation study, and Julia is here today to give us the final results regarding that.
Thank you very much.
really.
Julia Johnson?
Good morning.
Yes. There's 220 or so pages. She's going to be going through this page by page.
Page
No,
by
she-
page, line by line. We should be here for the
Yes.
next 4 or 5 hours. I hope that fits into everyone's schedule today.
And we will all walk
I'm
through
sure
the
it
9
did.
civility steps as we go through the compensation study.
Well, good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
And as Maureen has indicated, I'm here today to share with you the process that we went through in working with the project team to develop the base compensation plan and to go through the wage comparability study. I probably should have had a little instruction here on how to use this. Just the green button?
The next.
Oh, the big next button.
You're on again.
There we go. There we go. Thank you. So today, we're going to review what the objectives of the compensation plan were, what the compensation plan development strategy was, the plan design process that we went through. We'll talk about the project team briefly, go through some job descriptions review, the internal equity process, the external equity analysis, the compensation structure development process, the comparative ratio analysis, the merit decisions increase worksheet, et cetera. So I'll give you a high-level perspective. I will take your lead in many ways. I'll keep it at a high level. If there's a particular question you'd like to ask that goes into more detail, certainly I welcome the opportunity to field that question. And if I don't have the answer, don't have that full report with me, I brought two of my team members with me today. I can ask them to do a little research and we'll get that answer for you before we take off today if I don't have that readily available. So the objectives of the base compensation plan were as follows and outlined on the screen. Recognize the value that each position brings to the county. And I do point out that we first start talking about the position. We look at how a position is described, what the roles and responsibilities, accountabilities, and functions are for that position before we really start looking and turning our attention to the incumbent. So as we work our way through, the initial stages of the process are fully non-incumbent specific, and then as we move towards the end of the project, more towards a comparative ratio analysis, as we get there, that's when the faces and the names of the individuals filling those roles surface. We want to be sure as an objective that the equitable salaries are being paid throughout the county, not only for the job being performed, but also across departmental lines. Our previous speaker had mentioned some turnover statistics, and it becomes really quite critical, and that's the other key objective of a base compensation plan, and that's to attract and retain those qualified candidates. For a period of time, we may have thought that we could find our employees quite easily, but that market is tightening up. So when we find a candidate, we certainly want to be able to offer to them a competitive pay package to ensure that not only can we attract them to the county, but thereafter we can reward them and retain them for the efforts that they put forth within the county. We certainly want to increase the understanding of pay administration. This has certainly been a project that has unfolded over a period of time. We began this project back in April of 2013 and bringing it to conclusion from our perspectives with you today in December. So it's been a very thoughtful process to ensure that the project team had an understanding of the process as well, the personnel committee, and now we're presenting this to you folks as well. We want to increase manager accountability and to decrease some of the inconsistent pay administration that may exist. Every organization has some level of inconsistency at times, and by formalizing the base compensation structure, you're able to mitigate that to the greatest extent possible and to bring a level of objectivity to the process, to what is often considered to be an emotional and somewhat subjective concept of pay. Excuse me. So when creating a compensation plan, it's really important to understand what your philosophy will be as it relates to compensation. And part of that philosophy is to determine your market position. A market position is either to lag the market, meet the market, or lead the market. And that helps you identify how you want to treat other components of compensation, for example. So most organizations that we work with the exception of very few, probably less than 10% or so, 5% perhaps, tend to meet the market or slightly lag the market. This enables them to layer in other components of compensation. As we look at compensation within the county, we look at base and benefits as probably the two key areas that are most notable and within the control of the counties. Other components of compensation include incentives and prerequisites, perks, country club memberships, cars, cell phone, tablets, those types of things. But of course, in county government, that's not something that is readily available oftentimes. So therefore, when you're looking at compensation, the two primary areas that you focus on are base compensation and benefits. And the purpose for our involvement was really on base compensation plan design. So taking a look at, again, strategy, lag the market, meet the market, and lead the market. What becomes critical for compensation plan design is that you have a philosophy. It is a matter of whether or not it's a formal, defined, and proactive, intentional philosophy, or if it's one that is a result of years of experience that comes into play. But it's important for you to understand as a county, what's our philosophy? how do we want it to be, and how are we paying within that philosophy? Are we abiding by the philosophy, or are we not in alignment with that philosophy? A traditional compensation system has a project team, and our project team was comprised of, I'll make sure I say the names correctly, Maureen Murphy, the county administrator, Grant Thomas, corporate counsel, Shirley Scalish, did I pronounce that right, Shirley? Scalish, thank you, finance director, and then Kelly Hendy, who was the human resources director, and she also served, for all practical purposes, the project team lead and our point of contact. The next step of the process is to develop job descriptions, do an internal equity analysis, external market analysis, salary structure, comparative ratio, merit increase, communication strategy, and administration policies. Getting into each one of these individually, a well-designed compensation system always starts with a well-defined job. And that job description will often include the title, the exemption status, the salary, grade or range that it gets placed into. Not always. Sometimes job descriptions don't include that. That's perfectly acceptable. Position summary, essential functions, etc. The project team worked very closely to review the job descriptions, and where questions existed, they went back to the department heads to get clarification to ensure that the roles and responsibilities outlined for the jobs were as accurate as possible. Keeping in mind that job descriptions are always a work in process. Every time a position changes, it's certainly important to capture that on the document so that it remains relevant. The best period of time to do that, of course, is during the performance review process, when we're using the job description as a foundation for those discussions and to capture any changes that may have unfolded through the course of the year that will be enduring in nature, and looking to the future, we'll want to capture that. Once the job descriptions were developed, an internal equity analysis is done to really evaluate the relative value of each position to every other position within the county. We engaged in a process to help the project team understand a process for doing the internal equity analysis. We wanted the project team to live and work with closely the tool, and then we evaluated the results as we went through to say, Wifley did an independent review. And where we saw any type of anomaly, we called that attention to the attention of the project team and asked that they go back and take a look at that job a little bit more closely. If clarification was needed, to seek that out from the department head, and continue to move forward to finalize the internal equity analysis. And that document is contained in tab B of your document that was provided, the final report. Do you think it would be advantageous to pull up the PDF and show that briefly? Or are we good?
I think
Just
we're
doing
good.
a high-level view. Okay,
I think we're
perfect.
good.
And it's a great way to establish the position's relative worth within the job before you move forward to the external analysis. From our perspective, we like to review the internal equity analysis because it gives us an idea of how the positions fall relative to one another in terms of scope, authority, et cetera, et cetera. It also gives us the opportunity to review the job descriptions before we start looking at an external analysis. It causes us to look at the job descriptions probably 2 or 3 times, if not more. I'm looking at my project team in the back of the room, as well as the county's project team. We really touched those job descriptions a lot, particularly as we went through the internal equity analysis. And as I mentioned, it was done by the project team for all positions within the county, and then we reviewed it to look for any anomalies, and then to call those to the attention of the project team to get those resolved. We used the point factor method to analyze, and it breaks those jobs down into identifiable compensable factors by assigning points and levels. This helps to bring uniformity to the process and determines the relative value for positions, but more importantly, it also helps to bring a level of objectivity to the otherwise subjective process, and it helps us address any type of comparable worth issue. If we're ever challenged in that particular regard, we can define and demonstrate a very clear methodology that was used to help look at the job evaluation process. Some of the most common factors, and those that were used for this particular project, included skills, which can capture education, job experience, and knowledge, responsibilities as outlined, supervisory, administrative, public customer relations, government relations, safety of others, and complexity, and of course, some level towards working conditions, that environmental component, and some of the physical demands and hazards that go into that. We've talked about that. That also is outlined in your manual as well. Once the internal equity analysis is completed, essentially we set that aside and wait for the next portion of the project. The next portion of the project is that external market analysis. The external market analysis helps determine the value that each position has relative to the external market. And we use the job description to the greatest extent possible to look at each position's role and responsibility. We don't always rely exclusively on title, as titles and responsibilities can vary. And we take a look at reputable salary survey data in order to do that. Finding data is rarely a challenge. Finding the right data can be problematic. So we really want to use reliable survey data. Now, for our county projects, we did a bit of a blend, if you will, in order to take a look at your competitive positioning within the market. We not only looked at 3 other comparable counties that were incorporated into the analysis, we also took a look at private sector data and nonprofit, for-profit and nonprofit data using published wage and salary survey data. We had Economic Research Institute, we know it as ERI. We used compensation data, we used nonprofit times, we used the 3 counties that were used, and we also took a look at some state data. In order to do that, an individual spreadsheet is developed for every single position, and appropriate weights are applied to garner what the average wage might be, the midpoint, if you will, for the position. These documents are worksheets only. They are our tools that we use to help gather an understanding of like-valued positions. And that helps us then establish how we are going to go about developing the base compensation structure. Therefore, there may be a job that we looked at a survey and we gave a job 0 weight. That was our reminder to ourselves as the project team that yes, in fact, we did look at that data. We found that data not to be appropriate, but we wanted to make sure as a reminder to ourselves that we ensured that we had looked at that data. So certainly our working tools. On those external data sheets, you'll find the survey name, the survey job, the demographic, et cetera. When you get into the age, the weight, and the weighted, when you're using published wage and salary survey data, by the time it's collected, it may be a bit old, anywhere from 6 months to a year, or whatever the case might be. We then apply widely accepted statistical analysis procedures to age the data to make sure it's as relevant and current as possible to carry you forward into 2014. That's what's known as aged. We then weight the data on the basis of how applicable we feel that data is. So therefore, as you look through the data, you'll see that some of the weights differ from position to position. That's purely a judgment call and using the expertise of the project team to make sure that we're weighting in a manner that seems most appropriate. The weighted is the result of those calculations, which help us come up with a value for that job. So taking those individual spreadsheets, we use an analytical tool to highly professional term clump like valued positions in the market and evaluate how are we able to best develop the structure. The structure generally takes a look at internal and external analysis. However, when we designed a structure, Door County was very proactive, and they evaluated all the positions within the county. And I'll tell you flat out, that's the way to do it. If you can benchmark as many positions as possible, it demonstrates a fully comprehensive approach to the project. And we typically let the external market drive the placement of the positions and the development of the salary structure. So generally, we'll sort positions by their midpoint, the value within the market, and we construct a salary structure around that. The midpoint is the center of the range. You'll have a subsequent overlapping structure. So we start with the top position and we build, it's called a progression, midpoint to midpoint to midpoint, until all of your structure is developed. You will typically see that there's anywhere between 7 and 10% progressions in a typical salary structure in a traditional compensation plan. For purposes of Door County, we found that a 7% progression worked very nicely. So for instance, if your top position is 100,000, it would be 93% of that. So 93%, 93,000 would be the midpoint of the second range on down. So when you take a look at your salary structure, you'll see the 7% progressions, and then they'll have midpoints and midpoints, and then minimums and minimums minimums and maximums established. And in order to set the spread, progression spread, we did plus or minus 15% from the midpoint to establish that. And again, following widely accepted compensation methodology. I'm probably giving you more information than you want, but certainly I want you to have a comfort level in the process that was used and the amount of detail that went into the construction of that process. All positions are then built into the structure using those individual wage comparability worksheets. We then evaluated the preliminary structure to determine if those pay groups made sense. We did that independently, and then we brought the project team in. And we looked at that, set it aside for a few days, I think it was, and then we pulled it back up to take a look at it with fresh eyes, and we made some more adjustments until we felt pretty darn good about that from the external market perspective, if there's any anomalies that were pointed out as we were going through the review process. We also took into consideration the internal equity position, and we really relied upon the project team because they know a lot of their positions best. So again, we went back as a secondary process to look at it from an internal equity position perspective, and then did some modifications, slight modifications to the structure on the basis of that as well. But generally, we typically advocate for market to drive. So as a result of that, you end up with a series of overlapping ranges of midpoints with 7% progressions with spreads of plus or minus 15%. And you end up with your structure, as the case might be. Up until this point, incumbents' names and faces, length of service, those types of considerations have not been brought into focus. We strictly rely upon the nature of the job, the organizational structure, if you will, why that role and responsibility exists, what are the essential functions of the job, how is that role defined, and how does that compare to the external market. The comp ratio is the tool that helps us evaluate how are your current pay relationships, your current pay practices, how do they fall relative to the newly established ranges within the market. And that is the tool that compares everything to market. Market being midpoint and market being 100%. So as we take a look at a spread of plus or minus 15%, any position that falls below 85% is considered to be below the minimum established for the range. So on the comparative ratio analysis, that position will likely be highlighted in yellow. It says this position is below the minimum. It becomes at the discretion of those in the decision-making bodies to determine what are they going to do with those individuals falling below minimum. Are they going to bring them up to the minimum of the range, depending how long, over what period of time, et cetera, because there's some financial implications to that. When we have individuals that fall above 115%, they're considered to be individuals who are paid above the maximum for the range. And those are highlighted in red to call our attention to those individuals. When we look at those positions that may be approaching maximum, they're fine within the range, but we call that out in the event that there's any concern or consideration, because again, you want to administer your compensation as aligned with your philosophy. And by doing that analysis through the comparative ratio, you quickly are able to determine if you're hitting your goals and objectives from compensation as we look at that. The average comp ratio for the county was 113%, which suggests that the county's compensation practice is to somewhat lead the market in terms of that regard. And within the report, as you have likely seen, 111 individuals were found to be paid at or above the market, 33 were found to be approaching the maximum, and 10 individuals were found to be paid below the minimum. If the county so chooses to bring those individuals who are below minimum to at least the minimum established for the range, that would approximate a $25,500 financial investment. We don't make recommendations to you on how to handle the other positions. Those are business decisions that you all get to make as you continue to move forward in the process. There is a merit increases decision worksheet that's in your packet as well, and I won't spend any time on this, This is something, as you continue to grow and evolve and move towards your pay for performance concepts, if those are things that are meaningful for you, it's just an excellent tool for you to identify how does your pay distribute across the compensation ranges, how does that relate to your performance trends, and what type of impact would that have on your overall payroll budget if you were to give merit increases of X, Y, or Z %. Each year, that would be adjusted to make sure it remained in alignment with your philosophy and helped you achieve your goals and objectives. We developed, provided a sample compensation philosophy to the county. You'll find that there's a base compensation administrative guide template. The county fully has this at their disposal. We have provided that to them in Word as well, to the project team. Kelly will have the availability to continue to tailor that to ensure that it continues to meet the needs of the county as things continue to evolve and unfold. After a plan has been designed, it's important to keep it up to date, and we encourage you to do so. Each year, probably during the month of September, October, I encourage the Human Resources Director to reach out and ask what are the salary structure movement trends for the subsequent year. So for instance, if this had been a plan that was designed for 2013, and Ms. Hendy would have reached out to me in September, October, we would have indicated that the salary structure movement trends is about 2.0%, at which point she would have aged the midpoints of all the ranges by 2.0, which would by default create new minimums, new midpoints, and new maximums that carry you forward into year 2014. So right about this time next year, Kelly will be in a great position to identify what types of adjustments will need to be done and be able to carry that forward. We encourage that those ranges be aged every year to keep pace with salary structure market movement trends. And then you'll be able to determine when you want to do the next full update. We generally advocate that you do a full review every third year. During the time of recession, we probably suggested to people they did it every 5 years or to hold off until the market started to recover. We certainly want to make sure that you go through this effort, this work, that it remains current and relevant. And you go through a full update to make sure that all those competitive ranges remain competitive, because within the market, every now and again, there's a position that surfaces that becomes a hot position, and you want to make sure you're competitive with that particular position so you don't lose ground and find yourself losing talent as a result of that to other employers in the area. We've already talked about that. Compensation, we always say, is an emotional topic, and that's why it's very important to communicate how the plan was developed, and that's why we're sharing that with you today. Hopefully you'll see, and through the documentation that you have in front of you, it was a very thought out, very disciplined process that went into it. The project team put a lot of thought and consideration, a lot of time into that effort. And they also, at the end of the project, had created a review process for any of the employees that had some concerns that wanted to be surfaced. Employees were able to bring that forward to their department head. The department head, in turn, had a protocol to follow to share their concerns with Kelly. Kelly then brought that forward. They vetted it as a project team, brought that forward to us. We went back into the data on the basis of the concerns expressed, reviewed data as is appropriate, made structural changes as is appropriate, and carried that forward to the administrative committee. The administrative committee then also took a look at the review process and approved the changes and/or encouraged and approved other changes to the structure. And the project that you have in place today is a result of probably a 3 or 4 phase process, getting it pulled together, submitting it for review, having it looked at again, submitting it for review to bring it to conclusion where the project team felt comfortable with the contents, as did Whiffley, in terms of the appropriateness of the information and the structure contained within that. So quite a comprehensive approach, and I do want to give kudos to the project team. They were very, very disciplined and committed to the project and surfaced questions and ensured that the employees of the county were well represented, as well as the financial needs of the county, that they were represented as well. So both the personal side and the impact that we were having on employees and the financial impact that would also be established and experienced by the county. A lot of information I know that I just shared with you. Any specific question that I may be able to respond to at this time? Yes, sir.
We have 147 job classifications now for the county, is that correct?
I think we looked at 149 positions.
Should ask the project team now, did we reduce that amount now from 149 down to a different?
Kelly? I'd call on Kelly. We did reduce the number. I don't know that I have an exact number where we began and where we actually ended up. Kelly, aren't you our Human Resources Director? I don't have an exact number for you, but Kelly, we began with somewhere in the neighborhood of,
200.
there we go.
Yes, we were right around 200, 201 when we started, and we reduced that down to 149.
Thank you.
Of course, keep in mind, this does not include our public safety employees, our sheriff's deputies and EMS workers, but the job classifications in those units are minimal.
And one of the things that the project team that we suggested was the establishment of job families, which they also did, I think, which worked extremely well for the system.
Are there any other, Hugh?
Yeah, it's pretty clear there's a lot of work to prepare something like this. And I correct me if I'm wrong, was it Cano, Marinette, and Wapaka counties you used for comparisons?
Yes,
Yes.
sir.
How do you get data from the other counties like that?
We worked with Kelly. Counties typically are more responsive to other county employees than they are to an outside third party. So we requested their current compensation structures to see what they were working off of, rather than using actual data. Actual data can have some concerns with that, and actually we took a look at a couple of different frameworks. So we requested it specifically and directly from the counties. Kelly was instrumental in that process, Hugh.
As a tag to that question then, we own this report now, it belongs to Door County. Could it be sold to adjacent counties such as Wapaka County, that they would just have to retype in some of the different data? 3/4 of their work is maybe done to create their own.
Could they buy it from you?
Yeah.
No.
It's public knowledge.
That's public
document.
information.
Public
Can you
document.
copyright something like this?
I'd get the question for Grant.
That
I
would
don't
be-
think we would. It's a
I mean,
public
if I was in
document.
Oconto County, it would be pretty simple, I think, to change this to be Oconto County from Door County, would it not? And a lot of the legwork is done.
Well, and that speaks to I don't know how else to say this other than what the intention of each individual county is. If I were the individual counties and I were the employees comprising the individual counties, and I had a county that didn't necessarily take a look at their specific situation and simply adopted something from another organization, I might consider that suspect as an organization, as an individual in an organization. But certainly there's nothing, to the best of my knowledge, preventing anyone from taking a public document and modifying it.
Well, the reason I sort of asked all that is, you've urged us to keep on top of this. Well, maybe the 4 counties could keep on top of it a lot easier than just one county continued to go it alone. That's the reason I asked that.
Yeah, certainly, I think some counties, I know we have worked with a group of counties, 4 that have come together because they're really similar in nature. They think they're similar in nature, but as they continue to unfold, they're not. They broke it apart and ended up having 4 individual counties versus having the consolidated structure. Our charge initially was to create a single structure for all counties because all their jobs are the same across the counties. It didn't turn out that way. So we had, of the 4 counties, 2 partnering up with one another, and then soon enough, none of the counties could really keep each other on the same page. And it becomes a challenge. It's certainly a consideration, but it can be a challenge because each of the unique dynamics that are had by each county, there are some underlying factors and nuances that are unique to Door County, and the same would be for Oconto County or Marinette or other counties as well. But certainly it's something that is a possibility down the road. I don't know how that would work for you.
Sure. This is a nuance, and it's strictly in humor. So it's a question for Mr. Fisher. Oftentimes at county meetings, state meetings, you'll mention our jet,
Yes,
and other counties are surprised we have a jet.
they can't believe we have one.
So how do you put that into this pay thing?
Well, we deserve it.
There we go.
Okay.
Now, just so for my benefit, does that jet apply to all employees? Can we all get on the? Just those 2.
Does anybody else got any questions on this? Go ahead, Dale.
How hard or how difficult is it to get the information from the private or for-profit
sectors. I mean, you hear that a lot. Well, geez, the comparison's not proper, but is it easy to get information for for-profit people?
Well, what's interesting is we use published wage and salary survey data. So a customized survey, which would be going to each one of those institutions or businesses individually, gets to be very problematic and gets to be very expensive. So therefore, we rely heavily upon quality, reputable, published wage and salary survey data. I forget how many thousands of dollars we spend each year on some of our $20,000, $30,000, $40,000 a year or more on our compensation data. And we look at reliable data sources. So you don't ever want to use a data point that has less than 3 to 5 responses. And even that can be a little suspect as you move along. So it's important. I encourage you all that if you're ever posed with a compensation survey to complete it, because it does give information.
Is there any reply from businesses in Door County? Did they send any in, or?
We did not do a customized wage and salary survey. We used published wage and salary survey information. So the tools that we have allow us to zero it in on a geographical region to get a feel for what their wages are in that particular area. It comes up with our median, which is our midpoint, and your structure is established at the 50th percentile, which is generally the practice to go, not to lead at the 75th. That becomes very problematic. Yes, sir? Does that answer your question? Okay.
Ben?
Am I correct that this study only focused on wages and salaries and
Base compensation,
base
yes, sir.
compensation?
Yes, sir.
So at any point, was it considered to look at the benefit packages we offer our employees?
And I will defer to Maureen on that, because I think they had some discussion in that regard. Maureen?
Yes, we did. With Act 10, the rest of the benefit packages are largely, not exact, but largely similar in other counties that we compared ourselves to. The amount of money that folks are contributing to their retirement, for example, is set now by state law. The amount of health insurance that is paid, if you participate in the state plan, that's set by it. So we know that we're very similar to the 3 that we picked. When we originally began this, we looked at our 7 or 9, roughly, I'm looking to Grant, counties that we've been using in our collective bargaining process, and really winnowed it down to those of the 3 that look mostly like us when it comes to those other compensation issues. And we did, when we presented this at administrative committee, Ms. Hendy did look at the health insurance contributions. We specifically, as an example, decided that Manitowoc was not a comparable for us for a variety of reasons. One of them is that they have a health insurance package that is so completely different than ours, with a $4,000 deductible. So while it was not exactly part of this is base compensation, yes, the team were aware when we picked the 3 comparables, Kanto, Wapaka, and Marinette, that they are very similar when it comes to the rest of those benefits. Similar but not exact. So yes, we're aware of it. And when we get to the year-end review that I'm about to talk about, we do have some other pieces that we've been concentrating on this year with our health insurance and some other pieces.
And it's so important from a base compensation perspective to ensure that you're attending to your philosophy because of the other benefits often extended to employees that hinge upon your base compensation. If you're misaligned with your intentions from a philosophical perspective with your base compensation, it will have trickle-up effect in terms of cost and impact to the county that you will need to be mindful of, and which is just part of the process. Any other questions?
Leo?
It's been pointed out to me that there are some questions as to the adjustments that are being proposed to be less than 85%. Most noteworthy would be the Airport and Parks Director, which was a recent hire and subject to a $3,142 increase. Additionally, the EMS Director, a recent hire, would be $2,081 increase. The administrator would be subject to an increase as well, but only $211. But we have a public health nurse, and I don't know where this fits in the system, who would be pulling $5,764 additionally. And then we go into the library where we have 2 circulation assistants for the $419 increase. And the pages there, numbering 3, would come up with additional dollars at $3,711. My question is, were we that far out of market that we need to make that adjustment now? And why were we not even close when we hired? The only one I guess we were close with would be the administrator. However, the other ones just seemed to should have been given more attention at the time of hire, or else our previous salary structure was so far out of line that we needed to make the adjustment. Those were the only comments that I would have, and I'm sure not everybody in here understands the entire package, although it was given to you. And I'm just pointing out those 10 individuals that were down the 85% that are going to get the increases. But likewise, we do have others that are in a position for freeze, and there will be no increases for the year 2014 January. And very possibly, if they're not bumped by the bottom, being at 127, 141% of total market, the biggest problem there is that they could be in a 3-year freeze. But if that's what's required in order to get us to conforming with the market price, I think it's well. I appreciate the fact that this thing wasn't done in a month or 2 or 3. It's taken quite a while. I commend you for the fine job that you have done. I've been part of a Carlson study many years ago, and as the chairman might remember, we've been accused of shelving that one and not implementing. So I would first ask, can I have an answer to the airport director, EMS director, and the other? Why were we so far out of market?
I can't answer that, as I did not determine the pay rates with those individuals coming in. So I don't have that answer. I don't know if Kelly would be able to answer that, but sometimes what we find is that if we have the availability to hire a certain level of talent in at a range, or perhaps the minimum was different in the prior structure than the structure is now, that could account for someone falling below the minimum of the range. So it could be simply a matter of where the minimum fell relative to the old structure versus where that falls with your new structure today. And Leo, I think you'll find in our report as well, we call out that an individual is below minimum, but you as a governing body, project team, you all need to make the determinations if that is something that can be adjusted in one fell swoop, or if there's some extenuating circumstances which would say we need to break that into 1 year or 2 years to get those
I
adjustments
appreciate the
there.
fact that you are not recommending any reduction in the salaries, and that they slip into a whole position rather than to receive
Right.
less salary or whatever the case is. So I appreciate the fact that we had a lot of give and take on this, and perhaps Kelly will need to come to administrative with the others to realize why we were so far out of the market. And I'm not going to hold you accountable for that. But all in all, I think this is one of the better studies in salary that I've seen for quite some while, and I encourage support of it, and remind everybody that we did lay out a $55,000 bill to have this accomplished, and it was done externally. We didn't do it among ourselves, and we didn't have Mr. Mulligan saying, but my people should get more money.
That's for sure.
And so,
Now be civil.
Anyway, I'm trying, but anyway. It's my understanding that we're going to try to implement this 85-115 January of 2014, and the rest of the study to be implemented on 2015 January.
Yes, as well as the discussion about what our pay philosophy should be
Okay.
if we wish to lag, meet, or exceed the market.
Right.
And I think what I would add, I always like to follow Supervisor Zipper because sometimes he asks the questions and answers them in his comments, which he did a very good job of today. Another piece is that we haven't visited our compensation for about 15 years. This is something that should not sit on the shelf. It's something that we should look at. I'm looking at Supervisor Engelbert. It's much like health insurance. It's something that we should be looking at every year, particularly now that we have Act 10, which is the law in the state of Wisconsin, and that allows us to look at more employees than we could have before. So those are the important key pieces. This will be something that we will actively look at Administrative Committee each and every year.
So my final question would be, the recommendation is to take a look at it 3 years down the line to make sure we don't fall too far astray. Is this going to be something for the board to act on, or is the Fab Four going to get together and determine?
I would imagine this should be by resolution every year as the recommendation that we'll discuss at Administrative Committee, and I think we've talked a little bit about in committee, is that each year this compensation study should be aged. Julia's nodding yes. And moved up depending upon what the cost of living is. We believe the current aging is roughly 2%.
Right, and let me try that one more time. Salary structure movement trends takes into consideration, they don't call it cost of living directly, as what I'm sure most of you are familiar with. Salary structure movement trends takes into consideration the impact of cost of living on wages, because they don't always equate one for one. So absolutely.
And we also, as part of our payment of the $55,000, we have our Human Resources Director that has the data to work with on an annual basis. So that's where we are.
That's one of the things that we always like to do with our clients when we work with them, is to position the project team, in this case Kelly, to be very familiar with the tools. We encourage her to manipulate and work with the tools as we're going through the project, so she has a very solid understanding of how those tools work. And certainly we're always a resource if she has questions.
So is this going to, I'll ask Grant, is this going to require an RFP down the line? Because we anticipate it's going to exceed 20,000?
No, because it's a contract for professional services, so it's accepted from the competitive bid requirements.
All right, last but not least is we did have some objectors to the classification and the compensation that they were to receive. That totaled 47 people?
There were roughly 37 reviews that were performed either by the team that did the reviewing, the four of the management team, and there were 4 hearings, 4 department heads that wished to be heard further, and they were heard by the Administrative Committee. And 3 of those were acted on in a favorable way, one where the committee agreed with the review that was performed by the management team.
There was 1 denied by the committee and 3 gave you credit for doing a good job.
There you go.
Susan?
I'm not sure whether this is the right time to ask this, but am I right in thinking that under Act 10, we still may be bargaining for whatever that term is, something base wages,
Yes.
for next year?
You're correct. This is not the proper venue for us to be discussing this. The
Well,
proper
I'm
venue
wondering
would be
how that
the
plays
negotiating.
into this,
It-
or doesn't.
It doesn't. That is, negotiations are something that, there's a couple of reasons why we can go into closed session. One of them is labor negotiations, and that would be something that would be handled by the negotiating committee. Sorry for that curt answer.
I didn't
but,
know, I mean, we have numbers here,
Right.
so I just.
Yes, we continue to negotiate base wages with the 150 or so employees that are losing many of their other collective bargaining rights, but that would be something that would be, matter of fact, we had a committee meeting yesterday where we discussed how to proceed with those in closed session, and the management team will be following that direction that was discussed in closed session. But ultimately, it will be here before you as a county board.
So do you have any more comments before we go to the resolution?
We could go right to the resolution if you wish
Does
to.
anybody got any questions? Dave?
I don't have a question.
Okay.
I was going to make a motion to approve Resolution 2013-74.
Okay. Is there
I'll second us.
second by Cleet? Has anybody got any questions now? I think the biggest item is to say that it's a living document, it can be changed, it's going to be reviewed and re-reviewed and re-reviewed, and some of the things that Leo talked about, we're going to certainly discuss at administrative committee over the next few months, you know, what our philosophy is and all that kind of stuff, but those are open-ended answers right now.
And the key to this document is that it does freeze wages for those over 115%, and it raises those that are underneath 85%. So there is a fiscal impact and a fiscal note on this resolution.
Is there any other questions? Joel?
Yeah, just for clarification, trying to understand the spreadsheet format. The pages that are like 1 and 2 on the internal equity analysis sheets, am I to determine that the numbers that are given for a total number assigned to a position, what does that number mean at the end of the day? Is that, you know, a ranking on a person's job complexity or all 20 different factors that are part of it? Or what does that number really mean at the end of the day?
On the internal equity, thankfully, I still have Julia here if I take some missteps on my description of it, but the internal equity analysis was something that was performed by the 4 members of the management team, and you're correct, it assigns a number. I think the highest number was about 900 or so. The team jokingly, and that position was mine, jokingly gave me a perfect score, which of course I don't deserve. So I'm really about a 900, but it's based on, Leo's joking, but nonetheless, it's based on education, the complexity of the job, the people that the job affects, if there is a bigger effect on the effect on the community members.
The relative value of that position to all other positions with respect to that particular factor that Maureen is sharing helps to yield that number. That number in and of itself probably doesn't have much meaning, but proportionately and in comparison to other positions, it helps you identify what the relative value is within the organization.
Now, since we're talking about this internal equity piece, what makes us unique here in Door County is that we married that internal equity piece with the external market analysis that was performed by Whipley, as that was pointed out by several of the department heads, that we really needed to marry those two pieces. So that is one of the ways that Door County owned this study. And I have always been told throughout my 20 years, when there's a motion to approve and a second to that motion, I'm to keep my comments very brief.
Can I ask one follow-up question then?
Sure, cool.
Is it, and I'll use the word vaguely, assumed to say that these numbers will in some fashion dictate or dictate a wage associated with that position as time goes on?
Generally, I would say I would rely heavily on the external market because external market and internal market conditions don't always align. I advocate, as Maureen has indicated, that you let market conditions define the salary structure and placement of the jobs, and then quite frankly, you finesse that a bit if your internal equity is different. So a long story to say, Joel, I highly doubt it'll be a 1-for-1
No, I understand.
in terms of that range placement, but it's more of a finessing.
Part of the equation, though.
It's part of the equation, yes, sir, absolutely.
Yeah, okay.
It's part of the finessing equation to pick up the nuances within the county that might not otherwise be able to be captured.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Leo, you got a question?
I'm just going to refer to page 1 of the pay ranges that you all received, and just to take a look at it and advise the general public on what we do pay. We're not under by any means, and we have reduced our number in pay range from, we're down to 21, but where did we start?
We started with 41
Okay.
pay ranges.
So we're down to
41.
21 right now, 21 being the lowest range, and then the top range being in number 1. We begin hourly payroll higher is at $10.72. Mid-range is about $25.60, and the minimum range in the top is $45.75 with the top $62 an hour. So this is irrespective of the benefits that go along with it. So you talk about government being expensive, it's very expensive.
Any other questions? Yep, Dick?
Maureen, you had mentioned that the 115%, which would be the maximum, that would be frozen. And then the 85%, which is below the minimum, what did you say would happen there?
Those employees that are below the 85% would be brought up to the minimum of 85%. That's the fiscal note that's included with this
automatically would be done?
resolution. Automatically,
With this resolution?
effective January 1, 2014.
Okay. I just wanted to clarify that.
And
Any-
by and large, there are the lower-end page employees, I think, that in our library would be brought up from roughly, I think it's about, Kelly, if I'm wrong, about $8 or $9 to $11 an hour. That's why that $3,000 is what it is for the page positions.
Any other questions? We'll go to the voter board. Ben, you want to pull Mark in here once? He just walked out, Mark Firestein. Go to the voter board and either vote yes for the resolution or no.
Ben's the page.
Hmm?
Ben is the page. He's our page.
What?
Somebody want to vote for Mark?
Oh, Ken, go ahead.
Could I ask one question quick? Line 16 through 18 on the resolution, whereas the administrative committee, after carefully examining the final report, is recommending approval and adoption of the aforementioned.
Correct.
Did I miss an admin meeting?
Yes.
Because
Yes.
I did.
Yeah.
Okay.
So did I.
Okay, all right. Because when we took it, we did not adopt it
As you recall,
or
you-
recommended it. We merely
did.
stated at the meeting I was at that we would accept it. We would
There-
accept it. We didn't,
But there was a meeting that we missed.
Yes.
where they changed it.
There was about a 3-hour meeting where the review process occurred, and we missed you at that meeting, so.
They didn't miss me, but they missed you.
There was a motion by, matter of fact, Supervisor Zipper, and the motion was seconded by Supervisor Lino to forward this recommendation, freezing those above 115
Dale?
and raising those below 85%.
Automatically, even the airport director who just started.
Yes, sir.
Starting over? I don't know yet.
Well, you can't just pick and choose, Ken. That's the
I understand that, I understand, but there are always extenuating circumstances to every decision.
Okay.
You good with the vote yet?
Yeah, I got Fisher, Haynes, and Wiegand have to vote yet.
Oh, I'm sorry.
How can we vote when everybody's talking? It's not working.
You gotta do it again, Kenny. I think the things are frozen.
Just like outside.
That is passed on a motion of 18 yes, 1 no, and 1 abstain.
You want to take a break now?
Yeah, we're going to take a break now.
Good. I'll take a good break.
All right.
Thanks. My back teeth are floating.
Yes, there is.
We'll call the meeting to order again. We'll go back to item number 10, minutes of October 22nd and November 4th. Is there a motion to approve the minutes? Motion by Biz, seconded by Dale.
Should I do my year-end review or not?
Yeah, you missed Marine.
Yeah.
Oh, I thought you did that already.
No.
Well,
That's why
She
you're
just mentioned it, that was it.
Sounds good.
Yeah. Should I?
just a second, wait, let me finish this one first.
All right.
Any correction or addition? If not, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That's passed. Now we'll go back to the
Number 9.
year-end review.
All righty, the year-end review, and this is probably the most important year-end review that I can give to you. You know, the last couple of meetings, I've thanked the department heads for the great budget they've worked on. I've thanked Shirley for the great job she did with the budget. I've thanked Grant for his employee handbook and the work he provided on that. Kelly for the administrative manual, and Whipfly and everybody's assistance on the compensation study. But the most important people I want to thank today are you. This is the 20 of you. I'd be thanking Chuck if he were here today, too. But these were some really hard decisions we made in 2013 to position ourselves for a future. So this is a day for you all to give yourself a pat on the back and really take a moment, take a deep breath. You've done really some phenomenal things this year as a government, and we did it, I'd like to point out, without banging drums, without employees yelling and screaming at us. We've transitioned from a largely represented government to a largely, somewhat represented government. And we've did it because of you. You are the final sayers. You are the folks that took the final action. So thank you. Thank each one of you. This was a hard year. So we all know what we did this year. We did an employee handbook, an administrative manual. We made major changes to our health insurance. Many of those changes are not going to be reflected in the costs that our employees are going to have to pay. They were changes that were needed. And of course, you just adopted that important compensation study. So thank yourselves. Take a breath. Take a moment and just take a breath. As we move forward to 2014, because we know that when we make these kinds of dramatic changes to a government, it's going to affect morale. We know that we need to unify our workforce now, the 350 or so employees that work for us. So what I plan on doing is appointing a body. I'm calling it the mission team. Their mission is going to be to help us improve morale, help us unify the team. I plan on making this mission team to include management and line staff. I want it to include our more experienced workers and our new hires. It will include non-represented, formally represented, and currently represented folks. And what I want them to do, and in your packets, it's a revisiting of that mission statement. I have to tell you, when I applied for this job and I read that mission statement that's on our cover page of our website, I was very impressed with it. It's outstanding. And what that mission team will do will embrace those core values. And those core values really are also reflected in that civility project that we heard about earlier today. But I want them to embrace those core values of respect, integrity, openness, accessibility, as well as fiscal responsibility. And I will report back to you on what the results of that mission team, and hopefully these ways to improve morale and unify us are non-fiscal in nature. But I think that I'll be probably giving you a monthly or at least a quarterly report as we move forward. So thank you. And thank yourselves. I'm serious about that. Take a deep breath. What we've done this year in 2013 really is transformative. And only time will tell if we've properly balanced the needs of our employees with what the taxpayers can afford. But I certainly think we have. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Leo?
I was just going to say there's no reason for a resolution. It looks like we've already identified all those.
Okay.
What?
Okay, moving on to resolutions, we'll go to 2013-75, memorandum of Grace McCormick. Kathy, would you like to make the motion, and I'll take a second, and then you could read it?
Should I read it first?
Memorial.
I'll read it
Oh,
first.
read it first, fine.
Whereas Grace McCormick died November 3, 2013, and whereas Supervisor McCormick was duly elected to the Door County Board of Supervisors in April 1964 and served through 1968. She was again elected in 1976 and continued on the board until 1990 for a total of 18 years, representing voters in several wards in the city of Sturgeon Bay. And whereas Grace served on several committees, including social services, legislative, property, executive, and personnel, zoning, industrial development planning, solid waste management board, Agriculture and Extension, Soil and Water Conservation District, Unit on Aging Commission, Affirmative Action, Door County Unified Board, Human Services Study Committee, Ad Hoc Water Quality, Medical Services, Land Conservation, Community Option Program, Emergency Services, and Grievance Committee. And whereas Supervisor McCormick served as chairperson of the Health Committee and secretary of the Door County Library Board. Now therefore be resolved that the Board of Supervisors assembled in regular session this 10th day of December 2013 extend our sincere sympathy to Grace's family with this acknowledgement of her dedication to the citizens of the County of Door. And I so move.
Okay, is there seconded by Richard? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That is passed unanimously. Next item is the approval of Community Development Block Grant Housing. David, you want to explain that one?
Well, first of all, Mr. Chairman, I make a motion that we approve Resolution 2013-76, the approval of the Community Development Block Grant Housing Program multi-jurisdictional contract.
Okay, there's second? Seconded by Ben.
And
Okay,
I'll
go
defer the explanation to Grant.
Okay, Grant.
And I will defer to Sam Perlman, who is here from Door County Economic Development Corporation.
Okay, Sam.
Can I defer to anybody?
Yeah, sure.
The State Department of Administration has transferred and changed the way that they're going to deploy the community development block grants for housing. They are going to award them on a regional basis. Door County would be part of a 10-county region. That consortium would be administered by Brown County. The County of Door would receive about $135,000 in grant dollars that would be directed towards homebuyer assistance through the form of 0% interest, deferred payment, down payment grants or loans to first-time homebuyers.
Susan?
So are you saying that each county within that 10-county group, each gets a certain amount of money, so they don't, it doesn't go in a big pool and then you've got to compete with the other?
That is correct.
Are there any other questions? If not, go to the voter board and approve or disapprove. Kenny?
I did.
Oh, you did.
Yes, I did.
You need a new battery.
Leo,
There.
yours didn't go through either.
I don't know.
Neither did Ben. It's cold in here.
I think mine was too close to Ben. It doesn't want to work anymore.
This doesn't either.
And Ben's didn't work either.
I think my yes button.
Right, left versus right.
Oh, I just had to warm it up.
It is a little chilly.
Give it a little warmth. You're right.
Just let it lay on the thing. Don't move it up.
No,
Mr. Meyer.
I've got a hammer.
Do you hear it beeping? Here, I'll vote.
You need a battery probably for beeping. It's beeping. It doesn't beep.
Yeah.
go vote for him.
Hitting it.
Leo fixed it for him.
Not that it's cold in
Yeah, but.
Hold on, maybe they mixed up.
They're doing origami.
Oh, yeah. It's almost like your smoke alarm.
We're out of budget. We're out of budget.
All else fails, say that.
Lay it flat.
Are you below the 85% or?
Here. Try that one. Oh, let me switch batteries.
Brands.
Somehow I've been disqualified.
How about you don't?
Come on,
Cold by the window?
Ben doesn't.
Why won't you try your battery?
You can't move. Yeah, I got draft coming.
Who take a voice vote? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That has passed unanimously. Now, the next one is the appointment of the humane officers. Maureen, you want to explain that? Why?
I do indeed.
No, it works.
Said to be closer.
Hold on now. You didn't press that word.
All you need to do is aim at.
She's got to
Let
press
him
the
use
button.
Chuck. Don't aim at the screen.
Go ahead.
Put your phone in your things so you remember to be.
All righty.
Put your phone in your things so you remember to be.
Wisconsin statutes, Section 17303 allows us to appoint or it would be myself appointing, subject to your confirmation, of a humane officer. This really is an effort that's been driven by our corporation counsel, who deals with the humane officer more than I do, but it is an appointment that I would make. A couple of us got together, we put an ad in the newspaper and had some candidates that applied for this. They are here today, so if they could stand. I think, is Dr. Deb here? She's not with you. But we have Bridget Isaacson is here, as well as Dr. Allison Keene. From my viewpoint, Dr. Keene is on the right and Bridget Isaacson is on the left. They are the two candidates that applied for the humane officer position. We can appoint as many as we want, and these are two fine women, in addition to Dr. Deb, that I would put forward as a recommendation. Confirming these appointments were Grant Thomas was on the team, as was Joan Korb with the District Attorney's Office, as was our sheriff, as was the police chief, and also City of Sturgeon Bay Lieutenant was on the selection committee. So these ladies, in addition to Dr. Deb, would investigate any complaints regarding animal abuse in Door County. They are used on an as-needed basis only, so when a complaint comes in, they will be the folks that will go out and be our eyes and ears to make sure that animals are treated appropriately in Door County. And they're both very excited about this appointment. I know Dr. Keene is, but I know in particular that Bridget is thrilled about this. So they're here today, and it's subject to your confirmation.
Okay, is there a motion to approve?
Make motion approved.
Motion by Dale Wiegand, seconded by Biz. Should we use the voter board and see if it works?
Sure, why not?
Let's let Ben try first. Yeah.
Let's let Ben first.
Let's go Ben first.
We have to have them keep staying standing until they get confirmed, because they're really excited about this.
Let Ben do it first. Nobody listens to them.
I see that.
Come on. We're letting Ben do it
There you
first.
go. There you go.
Oh, look
Oh,
at
there
that.
it is, Ben.
Good deal.
Still Ken though. Ken and Zipper.
Ken is on.
Oh, sure.
What?
Ken and
You
Leo,
guys
come
aren't
on
allowed
now.
to sit at
Yeah,
Yeah,
figured
you're
out
sitting-
my
Thanksgiving.
That's some
Raise it to Ken.
There it
What you do
goes.
is it turn red, freaking railback chapel.
George is trying to go through,
Mine's through.
Come on, Leo.
They're trying to confirm his.
Was this in Canada?
Oh, my gosh. Okay. Okay.
All right.
That passes with
Congratulations, ladies, it's
one
unanimous.
absent. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Do you have any batteries up there?
As a note, there was a question if there's money budgeted for this. There is. For 2014, if you look at the fiscal note, there's $4,000 budgeted for professional services.
How about batteries? I haven't-
Okay, next item is
We have no
gifts
batteries.
grants from the Department of Human Services. Mark Miller, would you like to make a motion and then explain it?
Sure, I'll make a motion to approve Resolution 21378.
Okay, second by,
I'll second.
who first did it?
who was that?
Holly.
Holly. Okay, Holly.
And Mark.
Mark Miller made the motion. Go ahead.
Shows in the back if we need any particulars, but basically Kim Shai Skuglik has made a cash gift of $3,000 to the Door County Department of Human Services, and she had specified that these funds be used to help seniors in housing-related expenses. Basically, seniors that are at risk of losing their housing would basically pretty much be a one-time thing on each basis to help them out with, to keep them in their own home, to keep them as taxpayers and part of our community. And I thank her very much for her effort to do this.
Okay, are there any questions? If not, we'll go to the voter board and see if we can get people working. We might need it down the line a little bit.
Look at that.
Look at that. Look at that.
Get it warmed up.
Look at that. We finally got them retrained.
And I got them.
They've been warming them up.
I had to warm it up. Yeah.
Yeah, but you screwed mine up.
Down the roll.
You can't trust it.
Your hand?
You gotta hit yes.
Tim who says
Doesn't
no.
take much to
There.
understand. There you go.
Yeah, it worked.
Yay.
That has passed. Biz, you're next. That's past 20.
But it's full of zero.
One absent. Biz, you want to make a motion and approve the hangar rent thing as Vice Chairman of the Airport Parks, right?
Yeah, I'll make a motion that we adopt Resolution 2013-79, non-commercial hangar site lease agreement with Gary Gritt, Walter Neufeld, and Keith Miller.
Is there a second? By Dale Wiegand. Go ahead,
Yeah, I'll turn the explanation over to our airport manager, Keith Gasbaum.
Come forward, Keith.
These are three lease agreement renewals with these gentlemen. They have had aircraft at the airport for 10 years, and it's a renewal of their existing lease agreement.
Are there any questions?
I'd like to comment, Mr. Chairman.
Go ahead, Hugh.
I've commented on this before, and the lease rate is 17 cents a square foot. I pay 38 cents for my hangar, which is in a different airport. And from a pilot standpoint, I'd like to pilots have to be current. They have to go out and go flying around every so often. And last Tuesday, I think it was, I went up, and I went from Ephraim down to Sturgeon Bay, then back up to Rock Island, then back to Ephraim. It took me 40 minutes to do that. And the reason I say that is, if you could picture on the map up here, the distance to Rock Island and swing that arc over, you'd see you go pretty well into Michigan, Marinette, Menominee, Oconto, places like that. And I would like to suggest maybe the airport committee considers raising the rent by $100 a year for these folks in the future, but then reducing the amount of profit made on the gasoline and make up for the lost revenue in the sale of gasoline. If each plane up there flies about 30 hours a year, which is probably normal for a plane, and burn 10 gallons an hour, each plane would probably buy about 300 gallons of gas. And so if it's discounted, so they got their $100 back that way, and I'm talking not discounted for the hangar owners, but for everyone, the county would have the same amount of revenue come in. The hangar would cost the same to the hangar lessor. And what you would attract is a lot more people buying gas if you were charging 50 cents a gallon less. As a pilot, you just go on you can go on ALPA.org, and you can find out what people are charging throughout the state for gasoline. And it doesn't really matter if it's across water or across land from an airport or airplane standpoint. And people might go to where gasoline costs less, just like you do in your car. And I think that they need to take a fresh look at it and not come back and say, well, we're average in the state. I think you need to be aggressive in your marketing. And the concept is to use the airport. And so with that, I'll close my usual argument against the low lease rate.
Okay. Biz, do you want to put that on the next agenda, the airport and parks, and discuss it?
We can do that and
Okay.
take that up for consideration.
It's a good idea.
So the motion on the floor is to approve this rental at this time. So would you go to the voter? Is there any other questions? If not, we'll go to the voter board and try it again.
Now we're at discussion.
You got me.
We're in discussion. We're in discussion, ma'am.
Yeah. That's why it doesn't work.
He's got us keyed
How
up.
does that?
Change your batteries.
Yeah. Check your batteries.
Oh, my goodness.
Back to zipper.
Yeah, I don't know what you did, but it ain't working.
Richard.
Oh, my battery exploded already.
There you go.
Okay, we'll go to voice vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That has
Just
passed.
Leo.
We can't wait for Leo. Next item is the amendment to the fixed base operator agreement. Biz, you want to explain that and make a motion?
I'll make a motion to adopt Resolution 2013-80, amendment to the fixed base operators agreement for Cherryland Airport.
What you?
Keith, you want to explain that then, or?
Sure.
Who did?
I'll second.
Who seconded? Dale seconded.
Let's see.
Go ahead, Keith.
The current contract that we have with the fixed base operator provided a little different scenario than what we had in the past. And I guess what we're looking at doing is changing some of the share of the cost of the utilities, as stated in the resolution, that we would go, instead of a 50-50 split, to a 2/3 and 1/3 split. So it is a cost savings for the county or the airport. Also, item B3, there would be a flat fee of $60 a month for use of the terminal building area. The original contract stated a percentage of the monthly utility bill, which was hard to determine a fair percentage. I guess one of the things that the amendment does not discuss or show, and I don't know if you have a copy in your packet of the existing lease, but the county does generate revenue from the fixed space operator through the hangar rent and through tie-down fees and other fees. So there are some revenue sources that we do obtain to offset some of our costs on the utilities.
Okay, has anybody got any questions? If not, we're going to go to a voice vote now. All in favor, say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Opposed? That's passed unanimous.
Chicken.
I found out the problem with my motor board.
Okay.
My battery expired March 2011.
No, we probably don't have money in the budget to cover it.
Put it in the budget. The batteries are no.
Okay, approval of the grant for nutrition management, farmer education. Hugh, would you like to make a motion and explain it?
I will. I'll make a motion to adopt, say, 2013-81.
Is there a second? Second by Clayton. Oh, go ahead.
Okey-dokey. The Department of Natural Resources is very interested in how farmers, or what farmers put on their fields, and they have what's called a nutrient management plan, and that outlines the basically the tons of manure that can be put on a field and stuff like that. And so a farmer can either hire this out or do it themselves. And I believe the grant here is an educational thing to allow the farmers to create their own nutrient management plan. So it's a good deal for us.
Are there any questions? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That is passed. Next item is the approval of the Department of Natural Resources Aquatic Invasive Species Grant. Hugh?
Sure, be happy to. I'd like to make a motion. We adopt 2013-82. And basically what this is, it's a grant.
Let me get a second first.
Oh.
Second by Cletus.
Yep.
Okay, go ahead.
It's a grant to assist Door County in combating the aquatic invasive species. That would be stuff that's from the water. And it would be used for such things as the control of phragmites and things like that throughout the county. So it's in the county's best interest to adopt something like this. It's a non-controversial grant by every stretch of the imagination.
Okay, is there any questions? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That's passed. We'll go to the employee residency requirement grant. You want to explain that one? Should
Yeah,
we take a
this one I
motion
will
first, or-
explain.
Should we take a motion first, or?
Sure.
Is there a motion to
I'll make
approve
a
it?
motion.
Motion by Dave, seconded by Dale. Go ahead.
Earlier this year, the state passed a statute, 66.0502, that provides that, among other local government units, a county may not, as a condition of employment, require that any employee or prospective employee reside within any jurisdictional limit. There is one exception to that that applies to the county, and that being the county may impose a residency requirement on law enforcement, fire, or emergency personnel that requires such personnel to reside within 15 miles of the jurisdictional boundaries of the city, village, or town to which the personnel are assigned. And speaking with the departments involved, it was decided that they wish to take advantage of this exception, and the means by which the county can impose a residency requirement is adoption of a resolution, and that is why it is before you today. If the resolution is not adopted, there will be no employee residency requirement for any Door County employees. And historically, there has not been, except for the public safety employees, at least during my tenure here, so.
Are there any questions? John?
What departments does this affect? Sheriff's Department and Emergency Services.
So we can still hire county workers from Ashwaubenon if we want.
From wherever you want. One important thing is that this statute and the resolution does not trump the county's ability to impose a response time, which is different than a residency requirement. So.
Any other questions? If not, all in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? That has passed. Next item is the appointments of some committees and commissions and boards, and there's a 2-page list. I'd like to have a motion to approve. Somebody?
I'll make that motion,
David.
Chairman.
Is there a second? Second by Ben. Has anybody got any questions on them? I don't know if I should read them all, or there's about 25 people here, so. Has anybody got any questions on any of them? Most of them are reappointments. I think almost all, except for Tony who's taken place of Eric. All the rest of them are reappointments. Any questions? All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? That is passed. Next item is the office manager human services position. Who's going to explain that?
We have both Human Resources and we have Human Services Director.
I'll
make a motion to approve.
Make a motion by Mark, seconded by Susan. Would you like to come up, Joe, and explain it? The motion is on the floor, so.
We currently have a vacancy in our support staff unit. And as we've combined our 2 units together, we are looking to try and figure out how to be more efficient. And currently, I'm trying to supervise support staff in different spots in our department, and it's not working real well. And so the movement is to take the current position that's vacant, and instead of replacing it with a receptionist, changing that position to a supervisor who can oversee all of the support staff functions in human services.
Has anybody got any questions? For or against? If not, all in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? That is passed. Next is a report from RPC. Mr. Ken.
I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman, I would pass that on to Mr. Mulligan, the vice chair, since I was absent from that meeting due to illness.
You want to make a motion to approve and then get a second, and you can explain it, or have Mariah?
Sure, well, I'll make a motion we accept the report for Horseshoe Bay Golf Club zoning amendment.
Okay, is there a second? Seconded by Susan. Go ahead, Mariah's right back there. If you want her to.
I can do it, I mean, I remember what's happening here. If you can envision going down to the Murphy Park Beach, and there's a long dock going out there, and immediately to the north of it is a white building, and the building belongs to the Horseshoe Bay Golf Club. And what they've asked to do is have a rezone, and subsequent to the rezoning, they asked for a conditional use permit, which was granted, to use the building for such things as weddings and other kinds of gatherings. And the limit, if it was not rezoned, would be, I think, 10 gatherings per year. And so they'd like to have a little more leeway. And they asked us to do that. And so subsequently, we did recommend we change the zoning to RC, recreational commercial. And in the conditional use permit, which was subsequently granted, we said that, as an example, no alcoholic beverages could be taken from the site, and the bands had to be limited at 12 o'clock and stuff like that. So it's a good use of the property, and the people asking for the change own the adjoining property, so it's not a controversial thing at all.
Okay. Are there any questions? If not, we'll have a voice vote on approval of the recommendation of the committee, and then we'll have to go to the ordinance. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? You make a motion to approve the ordinance, or we'll go to the voter for it.
Sure. This is ordinance 2013-16, which is the actual change of the zoning. So
Okay,
I'd
second
make a
by-
motion, we adopt the zoning change, please.
Second by Mark Firestein. We'll go to the voter board. Any questions? If not, we'll go to the voter board and try it one more time.
Ben has to go first, and then I have to get his battery.
Don't blow it up.
Serious.
We're very
It worked fine.
There, let us pass the 20 yes, 1 absent. Next item is the
Yours is much newer.
Helene Meyer zoning. Hugh, you want to explain that one too? Or should, Kenny, you want to pass it on to Hugh?
Yes, please.
Okay. Then I make a motion, we adopt or accept the report from the Resource Planning Committee that would be on the Helena Meyer zoning amendment petition.
Sure. Second? Second by Susan. Go ahead and explain it.
Hang on, I got to get up here. On Washington Island, there's a woman, Helena Meyer, who would like to raise lavender, and also she'd like to have a ability to have social events on her property. And she's asked for rezoning of her tract of property. She wants to rezone 1.804 acres from general ag to commercial center. This enjoyed the support of the town of Washington's town board, and so I'd like to make, again, ask for the adoption of the report, or acceptance of the report.
Are there any questions? Biz?
Was there any opposition from the landowners or adjoining or anyone else from the island against this?
No, they were all in support.
Thank you.
Okay. If not, we'll take a voice vote on the recommendation of the committee. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That is passed, and now you want to make a motion to pass the zoning
Sure.
ordinance?
I'll make a motion, we adopt Resolution 2013-17, which is the actual rezoning of the property from general ag to commercial center.
Okay, is there any questions? Susan,
No,
second?
I was seconding.
Okay. Are there any questions? If not, we'll go to the voter board on this one. We got to switch back and forth so we don't have to retrain you all the time.
It's unbelievable.
I think he's playing with us.
I don't know. He's making as much noise as he can. Yeah.
Let us pass the 20 yes, 1 absent.
Works with a different battery.
Next item is the election of the Civil Service Commission.
Did you notice that Ben and I are very civil about how we...
There's the battery.
You all really do.
Very cooperative, too.
Yeah.
I don't have my resolution. Where is it?
Well, that's what everybody's been saying.
You don't have
We don't.
There's
Have a gaggle inclusive.
Okay, we're going to have an election of Civil Services Commission, and I guess the person that to be elected has been recommended to be Sharon Haynes.
Yes, and Mrs. Haynes is here.
Oh, there she is, there she is. She's related,
Here I am.
she's related to Dick some way, I don't know how.
Some way or another, yes, Dan, that's
Okay.
correct.
Poor
Do
woman.
we have an election, or just have a motion to pass it? Do we have to, just a motion to pass it, or?
You can accept the nomination and do a unanimous consent with Dick abstaining.
With Dick abstaining, okay. Someone want to make that motion?
Make a
Dale?
motion to nominate Sharon Haynes as Civil Service Commissioner, term ending December 2018.
Okay. And seconded by Susan. Are there any questions?
Nominations.
Any other nominations, by the way, I guess we have to ask? If not, and there isn't, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, that is passed. That was
Congratulations.
quick, huh? Sharon?
Easy enough.
Dick abstained, you abstained.
Yeah.
You want to make that note?
Oh, is that his wife?
Why would he? He can vote.
I could vote no, right?
Yeah, true. You may not be able to go home.
Hey, Dick, you can garnish your wages, though.
I don't believe Mrs. Haynes heard the no vote. Sharon, did you hear the no vote? There was one no vote.
Oh, I suspect from home.
Okay, are there any oral committee reports?
I think we're done.
Review the minutes. Anybody got any questions on the minutes? Going once, going twice. Any questions on the vouchers? Next county board meeting is Tuesday, January 28th at 9 a.m. Motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Mark, seconded by Richard Haynes. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Done.
Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas, everybody.
Christmas.